We pulled data from over 18 million vehicle transactions, and what came back was surprising, uncomfortable, and honestly a little alarming for anyone shopping for a new car right now. Here's what the numbers revealed. A significant percentage of new car buyers are walking away from their purchases within the very first year. Not because the cars broke down, not because of accidents, but because the ownership experience simply did not match what they expected when they signed the paperwork. Before we get started, have you ever bought a car and immediately questioned your decision? Drop it in the comments. You are definitely not alone, and this conversation is going to get interesting. Let's count down all 14. Number 14, Mazda CX-70. Let's open with something a little unexpected. The CX-70 is not a bad car. In fact, on most objective metrics, it's genuinely impressive. The cabin quality is exceptional for its price range, with materials and finishes that go toe-to-toe with luxury brands. The inline-six engine is one of the smoothest powertrains in its segment. Steering feel is precise and communicative in a way most subs simply aren't. So why does it appear on this list at all? Because of a question that buyers keep asking themselves after purchase. Why didn't I just get the CX-90? The CX-70 and CX-90 share the same body structure and overall footprint. The only meaningful difference is that the CX-90 offers a third row of seating. Once buyers realize that for a similar investment, they could have had more flexibility even if they rarely use that third row, the regret cycle begins. Beyond the identity confusion, real-world ownership surfaces some friction points. The transmission can behave inconsistently at low speeds, particularly in stop-and-go traffic or during cold starts. Wireless phone charging has drawn complaints about heat generation without reliable power delivery, and the automatic engine stop-start system has been reported to cut power at moments that feel premature. None of these are deal breakers individually, but combined with the lingering. What if I'd bought the CX-90 feeling? Nearly 1 in 14 CX-70 owners chose to resell within the first 12 months. If you currently own a CX-70 and love it, genuinely curious whether you had this same debate before buying, tell us below. Number 13, Mitsubishi Mirage G4. Here's one that catches people off guard, because this car sits comfortably under $20,000. At that price, how serious can the problems really be? Serious enough to make this list. The Mirage G4 is one of the most accessible new vehicles on the American market, and that affordability drives its purchase rate. But there's a disconnect between what buyers need it to do and what it was actually engineered for. This car was designed around urban commuting, short distances, lower speeds, minimal highway exposure. American buyers, however, tend to use their vehicles for everything. City streets, expressway commuting, long weekend trips, and everything in between. Highway driving in the Mirage G4 is where the experience falls apart. Forum threads are full of owners describing the anxiety of merging onto a busy interstate, the lack of confidence during passing maneuvers, and the relentless cabin noise that makes extended driving genuinely fatiguing. Sound deadening is minimal by design, which is a reasonable cost-cutting measure, but it means the car essentially amplifies road and wind noise at speed. For someone doing short urban hops, this vehicle can make perfect economic sense. For someone expecting a fully capable everyday driver across all road types, the reality arrives fast. Over 8% of Mirage G4 buyers resold within year one on a car that costs less than $20,000. That number is telling. Number 12, Nissan Leaf. The Leaf deserves real credit. It was a genuinely pioneering vehicle that helped normalize electric car ownership for mainstream buyers. For a period of time, owning a Leaf meant you were ahead of the curve. That time has passed. The electric vehicle market has matured rapidly, and the Leaf's core technology, its battery architecture, onboard charging standard, and available range now sits noticeably behind the competition. Buyers entering the EV market today have considerably better options at comparable or even lower price points. The cold weather range reduction is a particularly sharp pain point. In colder climates, the Leaf's already modest real-world range can shrink significantly, creating situations that owners describe as stressful and limiting. For buyers who expected a capable, worry-free daily driver, this creates immediate frustration. And then there's the financial equation. As prices across the industry have continued to decline, Leaf owners have watched their vehicles' resale values compress faster than expected. Holding a Leaf while newer, longer range options flood the market at lower prices is a difficult position to be in. The result is a pattern visible across multiple resale data tiers. This isn't an isolated issue. It's consistent and widespread. Leaf owners aren't just occasionally exiting early. They're doing it at a rate that reflects a fundamental mismatch between the car's current capabilities and the market's current expectations. For anyone already driving a Leaf, what's been your experience? Especially those of you in colder climates, we'd really like to hear from you. Number 11, Mercedes-Benz Claw, 1 in 5. That's the first-year resale rate for the Claw. 20% of buyers made their exit before month 12. The Claw presents exceptionally well. The exterior design is sharp and contemporary, and the three-pointed star on the hood carries significant aspirational weight. For buyers in the 50,000 range looking to step into the premium segment for the first time, the showroom experience is genuinely compelling. And then daily ownership begins. The Claw is built on an entry-level platform, and that foundation becomes apparent in ways that are difficult to ignore at this price point. Interior materials in certain areas don't carry the tactile quality that the badge implies. The infotainment interface, while visually sophisticated, has drawn consistent complaints about responsiveness, voice command reliability, and the number of steps required to complete simple tasks. Ride tuning leans toward the firmer end of the spectrum. On smooth roads, this is pleasant. On the kind of broken pavement that characterizes most urban commuting environments, the daily experience can become tiresome. Here is the question that many Claw buyers eventually ask themselves. Could they have gotten a more satisfying ownership experience from a well-spec'd Mazda 3 or Honda Civic for significantly less money? For a growing number of buyers, the honest answer is yes. The badge alone is not worth the premium when the substance doesn't follow through. Number 10, Mercedes-Benz GLA. 3 entries from the same brand on this list. That's not coincidence, it's a pattern, and it tells a clear story about expectations versus delivery. The GLA is Mercedes' entry point into the compact luxury SUV segment. Starting around $48,500, it attracts buyers who are stepping up from mainstream brands and expecting a fundamentally different quality of experience. What they find is a vehicle where the gap between the brand's reputation and the product's everyday reality is noticeable. Hard plastic surfaces in visible locations create an interior feel that doesn't match the price tag. Early ownership frequently introduces small rattles and creaks as those materials begin to settle. The suspension calibration, combined with standard run-flat tires, creates a ride quality that feels surprisingly choppy on imperfect roads. The same infotainment frustrations that appear in the Class show up here as well. When you've paid nearly $50,000, a touchscreen that requires excessive navigation for basic functions wears on you. Nearly 17% of GLA buyers were out within year one. The lesson here is a consistent one across all 3 Mercedes entries. Buying the badge and buying the right car for your needs are not always the same decision. Number 9, Mercedes-Benz GLB. The worst first-year retention of the 3 Mercedes entries, and the one that perhaps generates the most unexpected regret. Here's what makes the GLB interesting. On paper, it's the most practical of the 3. The boxy proportions maximize interior volume. Cargo space is generous. A third row of seating is available, which technically makes it a 7-passenger vehicle, a claim neither the Claw nor the GLA can make. Logically, this should mean buyers are more satisfied, not less. But the GLB's high resale rate comes from a specific expectation. Many buyers approach it as a smaller, more affordable version of the GLE. They're expecting a scaled-down version of what they think of as a real Mercedes SUV. The gap in refinement, ride sophistication, and interior quality between the GLE and the GLB is wider than the marketing materials suggest. Buyers who discover this gap once they're living with the car have 2 options: step up to the GLE or step away from the brand. Either way, over 21% made that call before completing a single year of ownership. On an average transaction price of around $51,000, that's a significant number of buyers making a very expensive course correction. Number 8, BMW 5 Series. Few nameplates carry more heritage in the sports sedan segment. The 5 Series has been a benchmark for driving dynamics and executive refinement for decades, which makes its appearance this high on our list all the more striking. The recent redesign made a decisive move away from physical controls. The 2024-2025 generation largely eliminated buttons and dials in favor of a touchscreen-dominated interface that BMW describes as a more modern interaction model. Climate control, audio, navigation, and most vehicle functions now live behind glass. For longtime BMW drivers who built their loyalty around the brand's driver-focused philosophy, tactile controls, intuitive ergonomics, the cockpit orientation that made the driver feel central to the experience, this change has been genuinely disorienting. The feedback in enthusiast communities has been clear. It feels less like a car and more like a consumer electronics device. Beyond the control philosophy, the character of the new 5 Series has shifted. The car is larger and more comfort-oriented than its predecessors, which has positioned it closer to the 7 Series in feel and further from the driver engagement legacy that defined the nameplate. Buyers who wanted sharpness found softness instead. Over 13% were gone within a year on a vehicle averaging close to $68,000. Many stepped down to the 3 Series. Others moved to competing brands that still prioritize analog driving engagement. Quick question if you're a BMW owner, how did you feel about the move away from physical buttons? This is a debate worth having. Number 7, Jaguar F-Pace. The F-Pace story is shaped by a single word: uncertainty. Jaguar has publicly committed to transforming itself into an all-electric brand, which means its current internal combustion lineup, including the F-Pace, is effectively a legacy product. The brand is not investing in this vehicle's future. It is winding it down. For F-Pace owners, this creates a uniquely uncomfortable situation. They're not just dealing with the normal depreciation curve of a luxury SUV. They're holding a product from a brand that is, in its current form, stepping back from the market. Resale value in this environment is under pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. And independent of the brand trajectory, the F-Pace has its own product-level friction. The infotainment system has gone through multiple update cycles and still draws comparisons that favor competitors. For a vehicle priced around $60,000, buyers expect technology that leads, not follows. 1 in 8 F-Pace owners resold in year 1. When your brand is restructuring its entire identity, commitment to the current product becomes a difficult ask. Number 6. Porsche Macan. Here's the entry that probably surprises you the most because the Macan is genuinely excellent. Ask owners who love it and they'll describe a driving experience that feels categorically different from anything else in the compact luxury SUV segment. The transmission response, the steering communication, the way it moves through corners, these qualities have built the Macan a loyal and passionate community. This is not a car people hate. So why does a staggering 22% first-year resale rate put it this high on the list? 2 distinct reasons. First, the real cost of ownership catches many buyers unprepared. The purchase price is one number. The first comprehensive service visit is a different number, and for buyers who hadn't fully mapped out what Porsche-level maintenance costs look like in practice, that first bill can reset their entire ownership calculus. Second, a meaningful segment of Macan buyers are not primarily interested in the Macan itself. They're purchasing it as a strategic entry point, establishing a relationship with a Porsche dealer, and building the purchase history needed to earn allocations for higher demand models. Once that objective is achieved, the Macan serves its purpose and gets moved. Both scenarios result in the same outcome: a high volume of lightly used Macans back on the market within 12 months. Great car. Complex ownership ecosystem. Number 5. Land Rover Discovery Sport. We're now entering the section of this list where the data points to something more serious than preference mismatch. For the Land Rover Discovery Sport, the central issue is reliability. At around $55,000, the Discovery Sport presents a compelling package. The premium styling, the Land Rover heritage, and the well-finished interior all create a strong first impression. And for the first few weeks, ownership tends to feel exactly as promised. Then the small problems begin. Owners describe a pattern that doesn't start with a single dramatic failure, it's a gradual accumulation. A warning light appears. A sensor fault triggers an unexpected visit to the dealership. A minor electrical anomaly requires diagnosis. Each individual event feels manageable. But when you're making 3 or 4 unscheduled dealership visits in your first 6 months, with a brand new $55,000 vehicle, the cumulative effect on your confidence is significant. Land Rover's reliability reputation is not simply internet chatter or anecdotal noise. It's reflected in the data consistently and across model lines. A staggering 28% of Discovery Sport buyers resold within the first year, nearly 1 in 3 owners. Most of those sellers walked away having absorbed substantial first-year depreciation on top of their accumulated frustrations, which means they didn't just give up the car. They paid to give up the car. Number 4. Range Rover Evoque. The Evoque is one of the most visually distinctive compact luxury SUVs available. The coupe-style roofline, the raked silhouette, and the Range Rover badge make it an immediate attention-getter. Buyers drawn to design-forward vehicles find the Evoque almost impossible to resist in the showroom. And then practical daily life begins. That sculpted roofline that makes the Evoque so visually striking also creates genuine rear visibility limitations. The compressed rear cabin that contributes to the sleek exterior profile makes the back row genuinely uncomfortable for adult passengers. Despite the vehicle's official 5-seat classification, buyers who purchase the Evoque envisioning it as a true family vehicle often discover these constraints the first time they attempt a real-world family trip. Beyond the packaging compromises, the Evoque shares Land Rover's broader reliability narrative. Electronic issues surface early, often before owners have had any meaningful time to enjoy the vehicle. Many Evoque buyers are first-time luxury SUV purchasers who were captivated by the design. The transition from showroom admiration to daily ownership reality is where the disconnect materializes. Over 16% resold within year 1. A car can be beautiful and still be the wrong choice. That's the Evoque lesson. Number 3. Ford Mustang Mach-E. The Mach-E arrived during peak EV enthusiasm, carrying one of the most recognizable names in automotive history. The marketing was confident, the positioning was aggressive, and for a period the Mach-E occupied a genuinely interesting space in the market. Then several things happened simultaneously. EV pricing across the industry began a steep decline. Competitors brought longer range, better equipped vehicles to market at lower price points. And Ford itself reduced prices on new Mach-E inventory, which meant owners who had paid peak pricing were watching their vehicle's market value compress in real time, sometimes within months of purchase. Real-world driving added additional friction. Winter range loss was more severe than many buyers had anticipated based on official figures. Charging logistics in areas with limited infrastructure proved more disruptive to daily life than expected. Software reliability issues occasionally required dealership intervention for a vehicle that was positioned as cutting-edge technology. The Mach-E is not a fundamentally flawed vehicle, but it arrived in a market window that closed faster than expected, and buyers who entered at the top of that window found themselves holding a depreciating position in a rapidly changing landscape. Many Mach-E owners made their exit within the first 1 to 2 years. The Mustang name carried them into the purchase but couldn't hold them through the ownership experience. Number 2, Land Rover Discovery full size. Everything we said about the Discovery Sport, multiplied and then charged at $77,000. The full-size Discovery occupies a different tier of the market. At this price point, buyers have clear and reasonable expectations. A refined, capable, reliably functional premium vehicle. What the ownership data reveals is that those expectations are frequently not met. The service narrative is consistent and persistent. It's not one catastrophic failure, it's the same pattern of accumulating small electrical faults, sensor issues, and unexpected warning lights that characterizes Land Rover ownership broadly. When you're paying $77,000, small problems feel large. And when those small problems keep recurring, confidence in the vehicle erodes progressively. Depreciation compounds the financial dimension of the frustration. Land Rovers at this price point lose value aggressively. Owners who decide to exit aren't just cutting their losses on the ownership experience, they're absorbing meaningful depreciation, in addition to whatever they spent keeping the car operational. Nearly 14% of Discovery buyers resold in year 1. At $77,000 per transaction, these represent some of the most expensive regrets on this entire list. Number 1, Jeep Grand Wagoneer, the biggest regret purchase by a substantial margin, and the data makes it very clear. The Grand Wagoneer occupies an unusual position in the American market. Fully configured, it pushes into the $90,000 to $110,000 range territory that puts it directly alongside luxury full-size subs from established premium brands. The Wagoneer name carries genuine American heritage, and Jeep invested heavily in positioning this as a serious luxury vehicle. Several realities make that positioning difficult to sustain past the first few months. Fuel consumption in real-world conditions is substantial, and for buyers who hadn't carefully modeled their ongoing fuel costs, the monthly reality can be genuinely startling. At these transaction prices, monthly payments are already significant. Add insurance costs, fuel expenses, and the maintenance obligations of a complex large displacement vehicle, and the total cost of ownership picture becomes difficult. Then there's depreciation. The Grand Wagoneer sheds value rapidly. Buyers who acquired theirs during the height of its market momentum have watched thousands of dollars disappear in compressed timeframes. Dealer lots have accumulated inventory, which further pressures resale values and signals limited market depth for second-hand buyers. Reliability concerns began surfacing early in ownership cycles, which compounds both the financial and emotional dimensions of the equation. Owners who stretch to reach this price point find themselves in a particularly difficult position. They can continue holding an asset they're frustrated with and watching depreciate, or they can sell and crystallize losses that are, by this point, substantial. The Grand Wagoneer is the car that generates the question, what was I thinking more than any other vehicle in our data set? Massive acquisition cost, fast depreciation, real-world operating expenses that exceed what many buyers projected, and reliability concerns that undermine confidence in the vehicle they paid so much to own. Number 1 by a wide margin, final thought, 14 cars, 18 million transactions, and a consistent thread running through all of them, the gap between what ownership was expected to feel like and what it actually felt like. Some of these vehicles are objectively excellent in certain dimensions. Some are genuinely flawed, but what the data captures is something more nuanced than a simple quality ranking. It captures expectation management, total cost of ownership awareness, brand trust, and the experience of living with a vehicle rather than just buying it. Before your next purchase, ask yourself, have you driven this car the way you'll actually use it? Have you modeled the full annual cost of ownership, not just the monthly payment? Have you spent time in online owner communities to understand what the second and third year typically looks like? The data suggests a lot of buyers are skipping those steps, and it's costing them. Have you owned any of these vehicles? Did your experience match what we covered, or was yours different? We read every comment. Share your story below. These real-world perspectives matter, and they help everyone making these decisions. If this was useful to you, share it with someone who's currently in the market. The best thing you can do before buying a car is talk to people who already own one.